You guys have been asking for a cleanup video, so come with me while I clean my shop after a major tornado. First, we need music. And of course a mask, because there is a lot of dander in the shop today. This is the dog in question, and the reason why I have to clean my shop today. So the first thing I'm going to do is use a broom and sweep up as much fur as possible to put in a garbage bag. The reason for that is because if I just go ahead and use my shop vac, I'm going to have to empty my shop vac like 50 times before I can even get started on anything else. I usually use a comb on my brushes to get all the fur out of my slicker brushes, and it's always a surprise to people to see how small the hair can actually roll into, and that's actually the reason why it's pretty easy to get rid of this fur, because it rolls into a really small ball and then I can just throw it in the garbage. Some people ask me why I don't put this fur outside for the birds, and I've tried that, but surprisingly there is just way too much hair and the birds just don't pick up enough of it, and then there ends up just being fur flying all over my backyard and into my neighbors' backyards. And that's also the same reason why I don't do these blowouts outside. There's just too much fur and I really don't think my neighbors would appreciate it. Now we're going to do our first initial vacuum. I will be using this vacuum over and over and over again throughout this entire cleanup. You don't just vacuum once, you have to vacuum and then wipe stuff and then vacuum again and then wipe stuff and then vacuum again. And no matter how hard you try, you will never get every single hair. There is just hair absolutely everywhere at all times when you're grooming, and it's impossible to get everything, but you do the best that you can, and you go over the shop multiple times, and it is what it is. Now, before I can vacuum the shower, I need to remove all of the wet hair. So I usually throw the hair into the corner here while I'm bathing so that the shower doesn't continue to fill up with soap and water. And so I have to make sure all the water is out of that hair first and then throw it in the garbage. All right, now I make it snow in my shop. So all over my walls is pet dander. Dander is basically just dry skin. It's also, dirt and literally whatever gets covered in their coat for years. I mean, these dogs in particular had not been groomed for 8 years. So you can imagine what was in their coat. So I actually have to take a brush and brush off my walls first. I'm going to do this multiple times, but I need to try to get as much of the dander off as possible before I go ahead and start washing the walls. So yeah, this part is probably the most disgusting part about cleaning the shop. Now the dander doesn't just get on my walls, it also gets on the ceiling. So I have to take a broom and actually sweep all of the ceiling off as well. Next, I have to remove the tabletop. That has to be washed. The underneath of the table has to be washed. And then I have to put the tabletop back on so that I can stand on top of my table and be able to reach the top of the walls to properly wash it. I usually use hospital-grade disinfectants to clean all of my equipment and my floors, walls, everything, but I've run out, so today I am using bleach. But it's very important that you mix the bleach to 1 part bleach and 32 parts water in order to properly disinfect. Now, just so you guys know, this cleanup actually took me 2.5 hours. So there's a lot that has been cut out of this video, obviously, because I wasn't going to show 2.5 hours of cleanup. So I am consistently rinsing this rag that I'm using and my scrub brush, and then continuing to wipe things down. So just so you guys know that I'm not just wiping everything down with a dirty rag. This is my first initial wipe of the walls, so I will use my mop just because obviously it helps me to get to the ceiling. But I'll have to do this again with a rag and spray the walls with bleach. But this first wipe just helps get rid of some of the dander and some of the oil from the coat so that when I do the second wipe, it comes out cleaner. This part here is very important, not just for groomers, but also for pet owners. So if you've purchased any of my products like this Ducky soap dispenser or, my shampoo nozzle with all the canisters, you cannot leave diluted shampoo in these bottles. You can leave them in the bottles for maybe a day, but after that you need to rinse everything out, and not just rinse, you also have to bleach them out. If you don't, they will grow mold, and then you'll be bathing your pet with mold, and that can be dangerous for their skin and for their health. After I bleach and rinse all of my tools, especially my pet grooming blades and scissors, I have to make sure that I dry them with the high velocity dryer so that they are bone dry, and then I have to add oil to them so that they don't rust. As you guys can see, cleanup is a very long process. After 7 hours of grooming, I then had to spend another 2.5 hours cleaning my entire shop. So when you're paying your pet groomer, please don't forget that you're not just paying for the service, you're also paying for the cleanup. And of course, right after I did this, I had to blow out a golden retriever.